And the same with even, I think, shopping centres. There's cases years ago in Sydney where an elderly gentleman got caught in a fire-isolated passageway, you know, because he couldn't get out because the door hardware was not working. So it comes back to when they get investigated, just a lack of urgency or a lack of understanding the complications to what actually could happen, but not knowing that accidents happen. I went down that passageway by mistake. I didn't choose to go down there. And so that's how serious it can get. And at the time, everyone's going to be investigated.
Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Facilities, the podcast where we talk all things insights, innovation and impact of the FM industry. My name's Aaron.
And my name's Nick, and today we spoke with Kristy Keech, who is the National Operations Manager at the AESC. It was a really fascinating conversation, Aaron, wasn't it?
Yeah, we chatted all things compliance and FM seeing those compliance pieces all the way through to completion and how important it is, especially with the risk that they take on personally, which I found really, really confronting but interesting.
Yeah, and we spoke about the importance of FMs staying up to date, educating themselves, whether it's through finding official resources or through networking, the different challenges FMs face managing broad portfolios.
Yep. And I think also the importance of those in higher positions and even in the FM firms above just the everyday FMs, budgeting in that education piece. It's a really interesting episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump into it.
Looking for the buyout then? Just be open to change.
You're so good, you spread my wings. I actually had to learn to do it because I have a question to every...
My brother had mushrooms going in his car.
Fantastic spreadsheet is like gold.
Water starts pouring on me.
It's such a rewarding career.
Drag them down!
We love you all of our customers.
Well, Kristy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much
Great
for
to have
coming
you
on.
on.
I want to start by asking you, the FMs I know at least, I don't think are getting paid enough to be held personally liable for things that go wrong. And around the country we've seen, it's not necessarily their employer or the owner of the building or the facility that is held liable. And we've had cases where FMs are being fined for areas of negligence or not doing the right thing. Number one, are they getting paid enough to take that personal risk?
Yeah.
But yeah, where are we at with all of this in the country?
Look, I think most FMs, like you said, would probably say no, they're not being paid. So let's just be clear there. But there are incidents where FMs have been personally found liable for negligence.
Yeah.
It is an extreme case, but ultimately it's a chain and a knock-on effect. So the owner is always going to be held responsible, and that's what our work health and safety legislation says. When it comes to the FM companies, they're also tied into that chain. And then what I think is really unknown is the FM is actually quite high up in that PCBU chain and that risk.
So for an entry-level FM who's come in being an office manager, what does PCBU stand for?
So for me, it's about breaking it down to you are a person in charge of a building.
Yes.
Okay. So if you work on a building, you own that building and you are going to be accountable for what happens in that building. And that's the safety of occupants. That's the key thing, no matter which legislation we talk about. It is purely about life preservation and the safety of the occupants within that building. So that's your tenants, that's the visitors, that's your contractors, that's the cleaners, that's everyone. So anyone that steps in, they are going to be accountable for their safety. And like you said, like for a guy that's just come in or a girl that's just come into facilities from either, you know, a contractor or a facilities coordinator role, that's a really big step up. And so to have relationships and to know within in your own internal business who you can lean on to really kind of get that information and to know there's all the different disciplines that you need to know in facilities, right? Like there's so many different elements. But for me, the risk and compliance and the legislation piece is really important because you are going to be held accountable, and you will have to answer questions that may kind of, push those buttons a little bit, and will they stand up in court is probably the key piece. I always say to FMs, what are you walking into court with in your back pocket to say you did everything in your power to keep people safe? Like, what are you walking in with, literally? Like, what's in your back pocket?
What's the evidence you've got?
It's your records, it's your contracts, it's your compliance, forms, because each state has a different legislation. So what are we, did I have my annual certificates? Were they signed correctly? That's the key. It's not just a tick and flick form. It is an actual legal document that says everything is A-OK in this site. So I think, to answer your question, no, they're not paid enough. But I think it's really important that they understand that they are responsible for that site and responsible for the people in the site.
Yeah.
You mentioned ticking the boxes and compliance and completion. How do those two things differ? And
That's
how can someone
probably
make a call on
the
it?
biggest gap I think I've seen in the last 22 years of working in this space. So whether it's one site or I look after a whole portfolio on a national level, it can't be just a tick and flick process. And so you've really got to kind of get down to the ground level of understanding what the gap is. So the gap generally tends to come from, I get my contractors in, I collate or I collect from the contractors all the service reports. Am I doing the defect management? So from those service reports, am I actually reading them, understanding them, actioning what needed to come out of those audit reports or contractors' service reports? And then am I taking the next step, which is, have I actually done the required completion of a document? So in most states in Australia, there will be a legal document that needs to be submitted to council, the brigade, displayed on site. It's generally the East Coast that's quite tight with those kind of requirements.
Yeah.
But a lot of the FMs I've seen over the years is they are across the maintenance. They know what has to be done. But is the contract built to the required frequency and the required Australian standard? Is it built to the state regulation? Because there is that variance of state. So if I do look after, or I've had experience in New South Wales, does that translate into Queensland or Victoria? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. So you can't take that, holistic approach or just, believe what has been put down in front of you or what has been done in the past. You have to kind of know, okay, that doesn't actually sit with the Australian standards. I'm not doing it at the required frequency, or, then they're just missing those little kind of gaps. And until you are investigated or audited or an insurance claim comes about, you won't identify those gaps. And so that's why it's really important from just doing to really understanding what compliance is and taking it to the end.
Yeah, and just that whole piece on completing that process. Like, so many people are good at starting processes. I know I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Like my ADHD brain will be like, I'll start this, and this, and then I've finished 0 of them all the way. And so that's really important when it comes to compliance, though, isn't it?
It is, and because that's where you'll come unstuck, and that's where the FMs will be held responsible, is because that was their job. Their job is to understand what that legislation says and is what's required of them being in charge of a building or a site.
Yeah. So you would be exposed to FMs all around the place, and you will have seen really poor, I was about to say shitty, I'm going to say it, shitty jobs be done with when it comes to this, and then you would have seen good, and then you've seen great. You see the spectrum.
Yeah, definitely.
What does it look like to get this right, and like what are the good FMs, the great FMs doing?
They
differently?
Are effectively managing their contractors and holding them an account to what the legislation requires of them. So not just of the FM, of the actual contractor. So there is responsibilities on a contractor to report to the owner, the FM, that the person responsible. They have timelines to report service reports and defects, and and then it becomes the next step, which is the FM's required to fix defects within a certain time frame. So There's the effective management of the vendors. Really strong contracts is probably a big key. It's probably something over the years I see that slips, where the bigger guys are doing it really well. They're harmonized. They've got, very tight contracts. And then you've got the guys that have got to run a purchase order. Like it's a random purchase order. I want you to do my servicing for the next 2 years of extinguishers, panels and hose reels. Like that to me seems a little bit loose. So having very tight contracts is key. Visibility and transparency is probably the next thing that I would say is what the good guys are doing really, really well. They're looking at their compliance, their vendor management, their service report management. They've got really good systems that show that at a one site level to a national level. So again, that visibility and transparency. So whether it's a national portfolio manager or a guy that's got 2 sites, they've got complete ownership and visibility on it. And it's taken seriously at a high level. You've got companies that have zero tolerance on anything under 98% compliance. And then you've got guys that are, did you have a audit done? Yes.
Great.
That was it. It's not asking the next question, which is, what was the outcome? Did you fix anything? Because the amount of reports, and that goes for work health and safety and fire and life safety and essential services, is a lot of the guys do the audit, but that's where they stop.
Yeah.
Because they think that's okay, well, I've ticked a box for my boss, so we're good to go.
Yeah. And a lot of the time they don't know what they're reading. The FMs, when they get reports, it's a foreign language to them.
It is because, and again, contractors can, when we speak about, what the contractors report on, you have to have some baseline knowledge because of those timeframes and the legislative requirements to fix things in certain timeframes. You have to actually know what a critical defect is. You have to know what a non-critical defect is, and you have to know what a non-conformance is. And sometimes we can get some, poorer contractors that, tend to use those words very loosely because things get done if you use the word critical. Like, let's be honest. If someone said that was a critical issue, you're going to go, okay, I'm going to take that seriously. But what is important is that we are understanding what a defect is versus a non-conformance. And an FM needs to know that because then that's going to affect their budgets. It's going to affect all their repairs. It's going to affect how quickly can we do it? How quickly do we have to do it? Is it a genuine critical that could put someone's life in danger inside that site today? And how quickly, and how do I explain that to an owner who doesn't want to spend money? Because, you've got owners that are zero tolerance on non-compliance, and then you've got owners that can be, quite budget restrictive. And so having to have that conversation, they do need to know how to explain it to the owners. So it's not just, here's a piece of paper, it said critical. You've got to then expand on and explain to the owners why it's so important to fix this and fix it now.
It's why that relationship piece is so important, for FMs, that they have people they can trust, that they can lean on when it's beyond that baseline knowledge. They've got that report that they can ask questions of, hey, what does this actually mean?
It is, and it can be internal. It doesn't necessarily need to be external consultants or providers. It can be an internal piece, and I see some of the bigger companies do that well through their lunch and learns and engaging in the FMA, for example, and those industry bodies that provide education. Like if I was an FM, and I have been an FM many, many years ago, like launching yourself into anyone that can give you education, and whether it be free or a paid service, is so important for you to really start to get the baseline. You're not going to get it all. Like I've been doing this for 22 years in risk and compliance, and there's still pieces that I have to learn every day. Because legislation changes as well, and the communication from the industry is pretty poor to the FM world. It's like a forgotten kind of industry, which it shouldn't be, but it is. And so you have to then lean on those external providers or contacts that you have And people used to be afraid of sharing information. You know, like you'd see that, we'd talk about the water bubbler conversations. That's kind of really died down.
Yeah.
That could be, the post-COVID kind of, experience. But, and working from home arrangements have really kind of dulled those opportunities for young people to ask their seniors or, ask someone within the business, hey, I got this across my desk. Can you run me through what you would do? Like people are afraid to ask those questions where they have to happen. They need to happen.
Yeah. And I think sometimes they're scared of looking dumb.
Oh,
But
the best
better to
FMs I
ask a
have ever
question.
seen in all these years are the people that asked a million questions.
Yeah.
And the people, if someone does come to you and ask a question, I don't think anyone in their right mind these days will look at you like that. No. Like they all want you to grow. They all want to encourage each other. And so I think having that mentality, you've got to kind of squash, like, who cares?
Especially when there's so much on the line. Yeah. Like when you come to think about that personal risk you're carrying, it's like...
Ask the dumb question.
Ask the dumb question, Like,
Yeah.
And I find that when we do workshops within internal businesses, you obviously as a speaker, you always encourage questions, right? But I think some of them are afraid, but we always kind of say, look, just ask the question. Don't worry about it. This is a safe space. You should be, because it is serious. You need to know it. And if you're thinking it, there's possibly someone else in the room that's thinking it as well, or they actually thought they knew the answer. But the answer was actually wrong. So like I've seen a lot of the time when we do these presentations, we used to ask questions before we'd talk about the topic. And it was all anonymous, right? So it was up on the screen and you'd kind of say, okay, what does the legislation say about this? And you'd get this A, B, C kind of graph answers and D was the right answer, but no one got it right.
Oh, no.
And then when we go to teach it, because it's anonymous, there's no shame. They're paying way more attention to the actual answer now. And so they're learning something different. So there's always opportunities to learn. No matter how long you've been in the industry, I think, you see the industry asking those questions, even if they've been in it for 20 years.
What do you see as the most common thing that people are getting wrong? I know you said they write the wrong answer and then they look shocked and lean in.
I think it's understanding what the legislation actually is in for that state.
Okay.
Or it could be the frequency of a service. Again, there's a whole standard that says, like Australian Standard 1851, that talks about fire maintenance. Like it's a really big document. There's a lot of jargon in it. And it can be quite daunting to look at 200 pages of something and go, where do I even start? We always say read section 1. It kind of gives you the crux of the whole document. To me,
don't start at your section 15.
No, people do because they panic. They go into, I'm not doing something right on hydrogen, so I'm just going to skip to that. But there's no context. There's no, understanding. You're just seeing frequencies and what the contract is meant to do. Section 1 really kind of tells the reader what you as an FM or a property manager needs to know. So I think that's the key. One of is that closure. That's where I keep coming back to is, should I be signing a statement that goes to a brigade or an authority? Am I qualified to do that? And a lot of, if you ask those FMs, they will say, I'm probably not qualified, but I'm pressured into it. Don't be pressured into it. No, hold your ground on that and explain the reason why you don't think. It's the same reason you don't service the extinguishers. You outsource that because they're the subject matter expert in it. If you're not comfortable in signing it, don't sign it. Go and talk to your boss or go and talk to the owner and say, well, these are the reasons why I don't want to sign it because, I'm a person that's got many talents. Risk and compliance and this kind of level of legislation is well above my pay grade.
Yeah. If you want to pay me more, I'll consider it.
I could,
Give me that pay rise.
You mentioned differences in states and different frequencies that different states legislate against. I know a lot of FMs that, for example, look after South East Queensland and then North Eastern New South Wales. And those sort of things. How does an FM manage that?
That is really hard because, again, you have to know what's happening in your state. So every state has a act. Every state has a regulation. And then some states have then offshoots from the regulation to development codes or to min specs or something else, right?
Yep.
And
It's already too complicated.
That's right. Like, where do you even
And then
start?
double it to 2 states.
100%. And then you've got your Australian standards.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that hierarchy for the state. And then each state potentially could have variances on the frequency of testing of the equipment. So like one of the perfect examples is South Australia. Anyone in FM would know that your emergency and exit lights get tested on a 6-monthly basis. In South Australia, there's a visual monthly test that's required because that's what they deemed to be appropriate. So it's in their state regulation, which then overrides the Australian standard. So, you know, if you were working in, let's say, Victoria and you've got properties in South Australia, you're not going to know that there's monthly frequency. And now you've created that gap. You've created that risk for yourself. And that's where those differences in the nuances of state regulations, there's zero harmonisation when we talk about fire safety and compliance, where work health and safety is a little bit more harmonised. You've got that national framework. So it is slightly easier to understand, but it's definitely, there's individual statements as well. So each state has a different acronym, a different name. And, you know, so in Queensland, we call them occupier statements. And then in Victoria, it's an ASMR. And, you know, in New South Wales, it's an AFSS. And, you know, so it is really hard for them to wrap their heads around. So
And so often things can change very quickly in an FM's world. So like they have no control over the owners saying, hey, this is now part of your scope, and introducing a building in South Australia like that. Yesterday they didn't have it under their remit and their scope. Tomorrow it's now, I'm managing this facility. How do they quickly, like what are some of the most important things they should go, okay, these are the things I should quickly look at because it's probably going to be a difference in a state?
If you don't have SME consultants to quickly ring and ask those questions and get the high level kind of dot points, I guess it's always going to that state regulation. So you've got to find the government entity that controls that regulation, because don't Google it, because you'll end up with an older version. So head to the source, you know, so you would look at a state government website, or which would then give you the kind of regulation. So that's probably where you need to, because most of them will explain it pretty easily to go, okay, this is where at least I've got to read this. That would be a key source if you don't have an external SME consultant or you can't lean on anyone within your business that's worked in that state.
I know that we work with a number of FMs who don't, they're organisations that don't have the funding for a consultant. They are 1 facility or 2 facilities max that they're looking after. They're not part of a bigger firm. And so these things like this, I imagine, is just all too overwhelming for them. It
would be.
Yeah.
And look, Google can be your friend, ChatGPT can be your friend, but in those situations. But again, I think it's also ringing the FMA, for example, like, you know, asking, is there a consultant? There are people that will talk to you without
putting you on the books.
Because, again, the FMA will provide some guidance, or they may even say, look, ring this person, go and talk to them. I think that's the key, right, is knowing where to start looking, even if it is just a quick 5-minute phone call. Ring up someone that you've worked with. But if they are brand new into the industry and you're kind of leaning onto that, I think that's quite a challenge that, you know, I see that it becomes too hard and they just let it go. They can't let it go. No. They've got to dig deeper into that.
We hear that time and time again about building your network, figuring out the right people to ask. And if you don't have it yet, figure it out, start doing it, or call the FMA, ask them. Go on LinkedIn, find people. Because you don't know what you don't know until someone reveals it to you often.
That's the key,
Yeah.
and that's where the whole crux of what we're talking about is you've got to know what you don't know, unfortunately, and that's a really big challenge. And it keeps coming back down to you have to do your own research. You have to lean into this. You have to kind of push those boundaries of uncomfortability and within yourself even. And you've got people that are quite, open, and they're really quite, they don't hesitate to ask those questions.
Yeah.
You've got to lean into that because you are going to be caught out if something happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Where have you seen it go really wrong? Can we talk about it? Are we allowed to?
Well, look, you can. It has gone really wrong in a property where a guest came into a property, went into a staircase, went into a stairwell, was locked in that stairwell by accident, and the door hardware wasn't working. It had been broken in the past. The lighting system wasn't working. He died in that stairwell. The worst case you could ever imagine. And the same with even, I think, shopping centres. There was cases years ago in Sydney where an elderly gentleman got caught in a fire-isolated passageway, because he couldn't get out because the door hardware was not working. So, they're the really big situations where, you can't get any more serious than someone dying on your side.
Yeah.
And it comes back to when they get investigated, just a lack of urgency or a lack of understanding the complications to what actually could happen. Again, people go, well, they shouldn't be in there, so don't worry about it. I'll do that in a couple of weeks. But not knowing that accidents happen. I went down that passageway by mistake. I didn't choose to go down there. And so that's how serious it can get. And at the time, everyone's going to be investigated.
Yeah.
The FM company and the owners, because you cannot discharge your responsibility no matter which level you're at.
Yeah.
You're all ultimately responsible. So that's a really, really, luckily it's far and few between, as far as I'm aware in that industry, but they're pretty big serious things.
Yeah. And in the aftermath of all of that, the FMs are often asked questions from multiple people, and their response is also really important in those moments, right? Like, because you've got, in certain situations like that, you'll have media who will come and try and find anyone who will talk, and oftentimes FMs aren't media trained; they don't know, and they'll say the wrong thing and put their foot in it accidentally, or a family member of someone asks a question and they, without having the right training, the right
you certainly wouldn't be saying anything.
No, you don't
I think
want
any
to be.
lawyer would say
yes,
to zip those lips.
Right to remain silent.
But there are trainings you can do around that sort of stuff. I know that Clayton Newts do a really good training around that.
I've actually seen them talk to FMs about their legal responsibilities, and I've actually seen them lecture to FMs at industry events about where not to step over that line and to really be controlled and measured. Yes, it's very serious, but you need to get legal advice straight away, and you need to go and talk to your HR. You need to go and talk to your business that you work for, because you could potentially make it worse for yourself by accidentally saying something.
Yeah. Even just saying the word sorry can be dangerous for an FM.
There's like some phrase or something, and it says you can check in with them, but don't admit guilt.
Wow.
Because by saying sorry, you potentially could be opening yourself up.
Which is wild, hey?
Wow. I know. Like it goes against every part of your
part of your humanity.
But I think that's probably one of the key things is you've got to get legal advice if something really serious happens on your site.
Yeah. Where do you see things heading for the industry?
Nowhere near harmonisation. Every state has their own agenda, which is disappointing because you can see that it works. The work health and safety legislation proved that. each state has their own agenda. Each state has their own thought process on, essential safety measures, fire, life safety. Where I see it heading is like New South Wales has a very strict fining process. So even for being late on your statements, they will fine you, the council, every week until you get it in.
Oh,
They're really, really strict. You've got other states that there is a legal requirement to submit it, but no one's policing it. So, and again, most state regulations and acts like this are generally changed because of a reactive piece. So Queensland legislation was really driven to change after Childers. So a lot of people died in Childers. So then the Queensland government said, we've got to do something about this. So again, it's that whole reactive piece. I don't think that's going to change.
no.
I wish it did, but yeah, unfortunately, I see the FMs needing to be smarter and smarter, and they need tools to do that. And the companies that they work for need to realise that. We've got to give them the right tools, the right piece of advice, whether that's through a consultant or our internal processes. We've got to protect these guys more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do they do that?
Through education.
Yeah.
Like again, even if you know 50, 60% of it, you now know 50% more than you did yesterday.
Yeah.
So the bigger companies need to invest in their team. They need to invest in that education piece. External courses, internal courses, all these sort of things can be achieved, and it doesn't need to be a quite, big expense, but it's the higher guys taking it seriously and then passing that down.
Yeah.
Because if they take it seriously, they'll have that expectation of their team, but you can't just force that expectation on a young team or a young team member that's new to the industry, or even as someone that's been around for 10 years. It doesn't make it right just because he's been there for 10 years. He should know all of this.
Well, things change so quickly as well.
They do, yeah. Like New South Wales recently introduced 1851 fire maintenance for the first time ever. They were the last state to introduce it. One of the last states, and especially being such a big state on the East Coast where they police that quite regularly. That was a big shift for the whole state and for the whole industry. Whether you had one site or you had 100 sites in New South Wales, it was a really big shift for them, and they delayed it because the industry wasn't. They took the feedback and they said, we don't think we're ready for it, which. If you've worked in that space, it's quite hard to believe that contractors would push back on that or the industry would push back on that they wanted to kind of hold the state back a little bit. But they needed to be ready for it because it was a big change for them. So again, that legislation can change, and there's a lot of, things going out on LinkedIn and a lot of industry nights that are happening to kind of give you that guidance. But I think there's too many moving parts. To keep on top of it all from an FM's perspective.
It's a real justification for those higher up positions and those larger organisations to really be investing in things like FMA events where like the level of information you're getting is really good, and it exposes you to knowledge and learning that you wouldn't otherwise have. With all the different events they have around the country, for sure, for those FMs.
Sometimes I find that the higher you go, the less, I guess, at the grassroots you remember being. So again, it's super important, like you said, for the guys that are running these teams, they really have to invest in their own education and knowledge base. Because that's going to be the downfall for everyone underneath you if you're not taking this seriously and you haven't got transparency on what's going on your portfolio, or do we need to close the gap? Is there a issue, within our business that doesn't take this seriously? So for them, they really have to know it. They have to understand it to be able to pass that down and then be in control of it. Because that's the key as well. It's not just, like we said, we go back to tick and flicking. Because if we don't know what we don't know, asking a question, have you had an audit done? Yes, I have. And that's where it stops.
And it's those times and the chances you get to go to events where you can be exposed that helps you realize, hang on, I didn't know that.
Yep.
I like listening to stuff like this, like everything you can absorb that goes, hang on, I had no idea that was a thing. Now I know what can I do about that.
Yeah. Like, because again, like, who's going to tell you?
Yeah.
Like, and I circle back to, a contractor's never going to tell you he's doing the wrong thing. Like you've got good contractors and you've got some not good contractors, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of
more on this side. But the industry is getting better because they are then tied into that risk as well. So if you've engaged them to do a job, and that's where that contract piece tied in, if you've engaged them to do a very, tight, controlled maintenance of this equipment in line with the Australian standards and the state regulation, and they don't do that, well, then they're holding that liability as well. So it's not just we gave them the document. You've still got to manage the process. You've still got to do that closure of, am I ensuring that they're doing that correctly? Are they protecting me? Are they, putting me at risk? They have to understand that.
Has this sort of working in this industry, and I know that when I started working in the facilities industry, everywhere I go now I look at the floors when I go in, because that's what we deal with, right? Is that when you walk into a building, has it just changed? You look up? What are you looking for?
Look, sprinkler heads, lights, exit doors, paths of travel. I'm the worst person to go to a shopping centre with. It's like you become hypervigilant.
Yeah.
You're looking at evacuation diagrams. You're looking at the hose reel tags. Like, going into a hotel is my worst nightmare. Because
you're welcome. We brought you into this beautiful hotel.
It is beautiful. But you become hypervigilant because you know the risk. Like if I see that the smoke detectors have still got their covers on them, I'm going to be asleep. I'm not going to hear anything. Hotels and aged care are the probably the two biggest assets where the risk really increases because of that sleeping element, because of, intoxication or something like that. Hopefully not in the aged care business, but the hotel business.
I thought it was definitely the
other way around.
They're just having rages.
Possibly. But you get those extra risk elements.
Yeah.
And so hotels become quite high risk. It's the same as childcare. Like, you wouldn't think, but childcare is evacuation is really, really important for the childcare industry, because I've seen childcare do evacuations and they are like drill sergeants. These little 3 or 4 year olds are holding onto a rope, marching out to the evacuation point, because kids are malleable, right? And they learn from repetition. So they do a lot of evacuation drill training. Yeah. And so it just becomes nature. They hear that bell, they hear that whistle, they hold on to that rope, they walk out neatly. And it's quite surprising to see. And then you see the whole other end of the spectrum, where I've seen evacuations and I've had to grab a kid by his shirt to stop him running on a road. Oh, wow. And I was there to witness. And again, it's because it's not normal for them. Yeah. Where, if you continue to practice it, the likelihood of something going wrong in a serious actual real event reduces. Yeah. And so that pattern of repetition is important. And I'm assuming we've all evacuated a building. We've all sat there and gone, do we really need to leave? Yeah. You do, because nature will kick in a stressful environment. Yeah. And you'll get chaos.
Yes. I live around the corner from Australia's first drive-through shopping centre, and Northland.
Oh wow! Yes.
It's a really great feature, but it's had a lot of events happen recently that have been really scary. And my son, who is 14, he's at the age where the news hits his phone, and so he knows that shopping centre's got a name. There's kids with machetes, and it's been evacuated a number of times. And only 3 weeks ago we went and watched a movie, and we're in the cinema watching this movie, relaxing, and this alarm starts going off. But it was outside the cinema. I couldn't hear it properly. Like, it was very distant. And he leans over, he's like, what's that? Because he's hyper vigilant at this shopping centre. And I was like, I don't think we have to worry about it. We're like, this would have turned off already. And he's like, I don't know. I said, trust me. And so we keep watching the movie. 3 minutes later, this young 14, 15-year-old girl, a Hoyt's employee, walks in. She's like, all right, everyone, you need to leave. Please leave all anything that's not essential, like just bring your handbags or whatever and go. So we'll leave all of our snacks, our drinks. And we walk out. They take us through this tunnel that I didn't even know existed to get out of this shopping centre. And like, it was chaos. There was no instruction from much, like, from anyone in authority. It was this 14-year-old, 15-year-old girl who then couldn't tell us what was going to happen and where the emergency was. So I've got my own 14-year-old is like, I just want to go. I don't want to stay and watch this movie anymore.
Yeah.
So we left. But that whole evacuation was like, it's terrifying. And if you don't know, we just got evacuated into this car park. That's where we landed. Yeah, wow. And there was no guidance or anything like that. And as a member of the public, it's terrifying. Like, could we be walking out into this car park and we're going to see someone with a machete or a gun? Like,
is it a fire?
There was no guidance. And so, we need to get better at that. And that shouldn't be entrusted to a 14 or 15-year-old girl.
There's a new product out that's trying to do, especially for shopping centres. So using the fire panels, that concept of the tones, changing that for different threats. So where they can say an active shooter or, someone with a man, but they're recorded, because ultimately the guys that tend to first respond to those, to let people know to evacuate on that crackly speaker that you hear throughout the shopping centres, is security, right?
Yeah.
So like a lot of the time that's not coming across clearly, and they're just using those alert, and then everyone knows the whoop, whoop, beep, beep. Like if you ask a random person, they don't know the difference between a beep, beep and a whoop, whoop.
I don't.
You just need to get out.
So everyone just starts to leave, right? But that's the job of the warden. So again, having that structure and training for those wardens, for those, that 14-year-old Hoyt's lady, young girl, but having area wardens, floor wardens, all these, there is training that they're meant to do to be able to take...
I was expecting to see someone with a vest or a clipboard or something.
A hat. And a lot of the time that may not be mandatory. So again, do we kind of bypass what's mandatory or what's best practice versus this girl walking in with her uniform on and yelling instructions at you? So... again, it's that practice component and making sure that they've got the appropriate training to control those situations, whether it be a fire or an active shooter or threat.
Yeah.
So I think, again, there's standards as to what you're meant to follow, and a lot of the time those evacuations are best practice. So it's not mandated in many states, the Australian standards. So which is crazy, right? They wrote an Australian standard about emergency evacuation. Yeah. And procedures and training, but no one really kind of mandates it in their own state legislation. They call it best practice.
Yeah.
Go figure, right?
That doesn't make sense. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. This has been so interesting. I think just that risk piece alone, I think, is something that most of our FMs may not even know. And so for them to hear that, they now know, okay, here's some steps I can take. I can go and get educated. I can go and make sure I'm trusting. I've got some SMEs that I can trust and lean into.
The aha moment.
Yeah, really important. So thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.